In this video, I'm going to build a solid workbench, not exactly because I need a new one. My old one that I've used in just about every video still works perfectly fine, but on a recent family trip, I found an old Pask Makes vise which I just couldn't pass up. The problem is it doesn't fit on any of my current workbenches, so this new bench will have to accommodate the vise. Just like the old one, it does still need to roll around the workshop so I can use it as a table saw outfeed table, also giving me full access from every side when I need it and to tuck out of the way to free up floor space on bigger projects. I'm aiming to make it super stylish purely for the sake of looking cool, even though it really doesn't need it. I reckon it's awesome though to have things in our workshop to inspire us on a daily basis and while working on future projects. Anyway, let's get into it. I'll start with the legs and I'm making that from this angle iron. I'll cut 4 lengths and then take them into the workshop to work on them some more. There's still quite a bit to do on them. I could just put each leg vertical in the corners and weld on horizontal cross rails. And as functional as that would be, there's a few more possibilities to have a bit of fun with it and hopefully make something far more interesting. When you cut a piece of steel like this with a thin cut-off disc, you need to think about where the piece is going to land. It can fall in a certain way that it will pinch the disc, and that wouldn't be much fun. I decided to go for a super chunky 10mm angle. 6mm would have easily been thick enough, but I really want this workbench to look pretty substantial and of course to be solid. Next, I'll cut a notch out on each leg. This will become more apparent why in the next couple of steps. I have a plan that I think will work, but I've done my usual thing by designing what I like the look of with no thought of how to build it and then work that out afterwards. We'll see how it goes and you'll have to let me know what I could have done better or easier. I originally intended to make the workbench in the one video, but it was getting too long, so I've decided that this video will be just making the legs. I reckon they're the most interesting part of the project anyway, and I think there's enough interest there for their own video, and I'll get back to finishing the workbench in the next video, which won't be too far away. I did the first couple with my angle grinder, which worked well enough, but then I realised that I should be using my metal cutting circular saw. It's a bit faster and makes less dust. It doesn't do plunge cuts though, so I'm still using the angle grinder for the back cut. For the next step, the legs need bending outwards here, which will open up the notch. I was planning on doing this on the fly press, but there isn't enough clearance by the time I fit a top and bottom die. Plus these corners will interfere with the legs as they get bent. So instead, I've welded up this fixture off camera. It's basically a hook and a fulcrum, and with some leverage, it will hopefully bend the 10mm thick steel. First though, I'll clean up these inside corners. I'll try and bend them cold. If that doesn't work, I'll have to figure out a way of heating them up. I need to add some leverage, so I'll clamp a hardwood stud to the leg, which hopefully should be enough. I'm going slowly just to see if it's doing what I want it to. It's looking pretty good. It takes a bit of force to bend, but it's working great. I've run out of clearance with the stud, so I'll replace it with the shorter one and go again. It won't have the same leverage, but I think I can still finish the bend. I've made a plywood angle to help try and bend all the 4 legs exactly the same. I'm super happy with that. I honestly thought that I was going to have more trouble with it, but it worked very well. It's the end of the day, but I wanted to get that one done before closing up just to see if it worked. So first thing the next morning, I did the others. They all came out pretty consistent. This one didn't quite bend as well right on the one edge, probably because I cut too deep into it when cutting out the notch. It is only on that one edge though, the other end, and 90% of the bend is perfect. I may leave it as it is, or I may have a go at fixing it. I left the legs slightly longer than needed, so they will need trimming, but next I'll cut a rail to join the two legs together. I'm making it from angle iron again, so it has a ledge which I can use to support the shelf. That's the basic piece, I just need to make it fit into the notches on the legs. I've marked onto the plywood where the intersections of the notches are, so I can transfer those onto the cross rail. It just needs a radius on the ends for a better fit. I'll mark this set of legs so I don't get them mixed up, and then I'll prepare the next set. Before I do though, I've decided to try and fix that slight uneven bend. I'll heat up the corner with my LPG and compressed air torch that I got from Gamaco Artisan Supplies, then try and hammer it out. I reckon that looks better, so next I can prepare the other cross rail. This one's ended up with a big gap, but it'll be easy enough to fill in. Before I weld them, I'll trim the ends first. I've marked them from the template, flipped them over, and then joined up those marks. I could keep cutting through the end, but I don't want to kill the saw blade, so I'll grind that instead. These saw blades are amazing, cutting all the way through material, but if they bog down by trying to do too much, then they'll get ruined very quickly. I'm using a 36 grit fibre disc, which makes pretty light work of it. It's not really needed, but just to make sure that it's square and the belt grinder being right there, I'll make a few final passes to finish it off. The top ones are done, so I'll quickly do the same on the bottom. I was going to weld these pieces together next, but now I've decided to prepare all of the main pieces and weld it together in one go. Next I'll cut the upper cross rail, which is from 180 by 10mm thick flat bar. They're starting to look like a set of legs. I got both sets up to the same stage, and off camera I cut pieces for the feet. I didn't think I needed to show that, as it's the same as what I've already been doing. Anyway, I'll quickly grind bevels on all of the joints and then start welding it together. To keep the pieces aligned, I'll set them up on top of the template and tack them together. I've just tacked the one side for now, so I'll do the same for the other set, and then I can get rid of the template and weld directly on the table. That went great, and I even filled in the big gaps on the lower rail. Next, I'll grind the welds, and not because I'm embarrassed of them. The project is all about fabricating legs to have a cast iron look. If I leave an obvious trace of weld, then the project just hasn't worked. So however good or bad the welding is, it has to be hidden. They're not done yet. There's still a few pieces to go, which will add a bit more shape to them and make them even more three-dimensional. To cut the next piece, I spent a couple of minutes making a guide to help make square cuts with the circular saw. The edge lines up with my marks, making it super quick and easy to use. These pieces need a cap, and the waste pieces that came out of the top rail are perfect to make them from. Next, I'll make a triangle piece to fit in here. I don't think any of this is essential, but it will actually stabilise the workbench and help prevent it from racking. I just need to grind the bevels on all those pieces and then I can weld them. I also made these pieces for the feet. Again, not essential, but they will finish things off nicely. They really are getting quite heavy. I actually worked out the weight from the volume in my CAD software. I did that in cubic centimeters, then multiplied that by 7.85, which is the weight of mild steel by cubic centimeter. And that gives me 52 kilograms per set of legs. That is with the finished legs, and there are a few more smaller pieces to add yet, but it's almost there and it's close to the final weight. Next, I'll cut pieces for all the inside corners as I want them to have a radius. I'll make use of some of the scraps from the floor. Some of them already have the correct angle, which works out nicely. That's the first 4 done. Now I need another 8 with a bigger radius. There's still a couple more parts to add yet, but next I'll grind these welds. I've decided to set up outside on this makeshift workbench. It keeps the dust out there and out of my workshop, and the grinding room is getting a bit small for these legs. The corner radius pieces aren't perfect, but a bit of filler before painting and they should look great. I'm using a die grinder with a carbide burr to continue the inside radius of the angle iron through the weld. As I mentioned earlier, I don't want any weld to show. Saying that, some of the welds which aren't on show I won't grind as there's no point. That's the end of the day, so I took them back inside, ready for the next pieces. And to explain what they are, I'll use a 3D model. I've decided to connect the two legs together with a wooden beam. I've seen this on old sets of legs and always wanted to build a table like it. I just need a few pieces to support the end of the beam and also a piece that extends down into the open section. It'd be much easier to weld rails across to join the two sets of legs, but I really like the look of this method. To position the beam supports, I've made this quick guide with a centre cut out to line up with the centre mark on the legs. Next, I need to deal with the position of the casters. When I designed the bench, I tried putting them underneath the feet, but I thought they looked pretty ridiculous. I played around with ideas for a day or so and then came up with the solution that I really liked. I'll weld extended pieces onto the side. These are going to take the whole weight of the bench, or I should actually say that the joint is. Because of that, I'm using 20mm thick steel so I can get a super strong weld joint. I couldn't get a piece of flat bar the same width as the angle iron, so I'll have to grind it down. I'm using a 24 grit belt, so it took no time at all. Before I weld them on, I need to drill and tap holes ready for attaching the casters. To finish off the threads to the bottom of the hole, I'll use this cheap tap that I've ground off the leading taper, making it into a bottoming tap. I've ground the bevels about a third of the way into it so I can get the weld right into the heart of the joint and hopefully making it super strong. To line them up, I've cut a piece of plywood which will keep the two pieces on the same plane. After making one weld, I'm flipping the legs over and then welding the other side, but I will flip it back over again and make more passes and build up that joint, which should be more than strong enough. I could weld gussets on, which would instantly make it strong enough, but it would totally change the look, and I think this will be fine anyway. That's everything welded. I'll clean them up, ready for painting. I said the welding was done, but I've had an afterthought. This edge is really quite thin to rest the workbench top on, so I think it'll be worth welding on a strip of angle iron for how long it'll take. There's a handful of holes need drilling before I paint. The first ones are the mounting holes for the top, and I also need a couple of holes on either end for the shelf. The beam that attaches the legs together will have a threaded rod running all the way through it, so I need holes for those. And the last holes I need are for this vise, which I'll be installing on the end of the bench. It needs through holes for the guide rails and the vise screw. After all of the drilling, I'll wash them down with solvent to remove the cutting oil and then take them back inside to prepare them for painting. While the filler's setting, I'll add raised lettering to make the cast iron theme more convincing. I've done this a couple of times before and I even made a video of it. I'll put a link to that above if you're interested. The first thing I need to do is carve a mould, which I'll do in this plastic chopping board. I like this workbench for just screwing things down and not worrying about it. I don't think I'll be doing that on the new workbench though, at least not for a while. I do plan on keeping this workbench as well though, as long as I can shoehorn it in somewhere. The plastic chopping board carves very nicely. It doesn't take long at all. I tested each letter with plasticine and tidied them up a bit where needed. The carving from start to finish took about 20 minutes. For the cast letters, I'll use JB Weld and the quick stuff works very well. After filling the letters, I push it into the mould in 4 directions, left and right and up and down, making sure that there's no voids, and then I scrape off the excess. I left it for an hour, so let's check it out. Every time I've done this, I've worried if it's worked or not, but every time it's been absolutely fine. With some paint built up around it, that should look great. I'll start sanding the filler and then we can get some primer on. I've also cast the lettering onto the other set of legs. I'm nearly there, I'm just hand sanding the edges and then it really is time to paint. I'm using etch primer and it used about a can on each set of legs. I didn't show it, but I did fill a few more bits and then I sanded and reprimed them. For the finish, I'm using this silver green hammer finish. I've used it on a few projects now and I think it's the perfect colour for these legs. I built up the coats and I reckon they're looking great. They're probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I really do love this sort of style. I didn't want to drag them or scratch them in any way, so Kath helped me move them inside. I'm super happy with them and I can't wait to see them on the finished workbench. I'm already well into it, so the next video will be with you very soon. It was looking like the video, if I kept it to one part, was heading for over an hour long. I felt like I needed to get a video out as well, so that's why I made it into two. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one.